I've gone on Green Arrow. Hello all, and welcome to episode 79 of the 3 for 1 Sky Fantasy podcast by fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Just had an absolute nightmare there. I was just explaining to Paul. Paul comes on kind of 5 or 10 minutes early, and we always end up just nattering around everything. And what I've managed to kind of do in the last 20 seconds is go live with the Green Arrow FPL sort of overlay and then stay on mute. So Paul, I'm blaming you. It's my fault, but hopefully we're all up and running now. My name.
Welcome to the Sky Amateur Podcast.
You were Adam Hopcroft for a couple of minutes. My name is Fergi, and I'm joined as usual by my co-host, my distracting co-host, Paul McAnulty. Paul, how was your Sky weekend?
If you'd asked me at 4:30 yesterday, I would have said terrible, but the double Arsenal clean sheet coming in kind of bounced me back up. And I'm quite happy with my team now, and I've used very little transfers. I've still got well above the average, so I'm actually, as I say, a lot happier now than what I was at 4 o'clock yesterday.
Very nice, yeah. So you brought in, you had Gabriel, didn't you? I assume you brought in Ramsdale as well, and so you had a double up. I think in all fairness, it never looked like conceding really. Ramsdale pulled out one of his, pretty easy save for him, but made it look like a super save. But other than that, there wasn't much there, was there? So, yeah, so well done. 54th. Go on.
Yeah, we were talking about the Chelsea defence and like how many should we go for? 1, 2, 3, and I'm sat on none.
Have you still got none? Have you? Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh wow! Yeah. So a slight dropping over rank, Paul, 44th to 54th, but you're kind of happy with that still, yeah?
No, I'm actually, like, if Arsenal hadn't kept the clean sheet, I'd be really annoyed today. They kept the clean sheet, and I don't mind the 10 places dropped. I used one transfer, brought in Ramsdale for Pope, and I've got a lot of players from now until the international break as well. So I've got 2 players tonight. I've got 3 Arsenal players who play twice in that period of time, so I've got multiple opportunities. Nice. I'm basically pretty happy with the team, with the way my team's set up.
Very well played. Before we move on to my team, just a couple of shout outs. Jacob's asked me to tell his friend Dom Slater that he is the luckiest player in the world. You are lucky, Dom. You are a very lucky player. And Dave Perrin's also in the chat. Shout out to little Blake, who's listening to me. Who's listening with him with COVID. He's feeling fine now. Hello there, Blake. Hope you're doing well, and hope your dad is looking after you, and hopefully you can be better than your dad is at fantasy football in the coming years. A quick look at my team. I've flown up in rank. I'm 88th overall, and I've gone from, I think, 240 to 160 to 88 in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I've got to be honest, aside from captaining Coutinho on Thursday, which was a pretty last-minute inspired move or not, however you want to look at it, I am reading anything differently. I noticed we had a question on Twitter, didn't we, around how have I flown up? I don't own any low-owned players. I got quite fortunate. So last Thursday, obviously Rudiger didn't start, and many people had to make a decision of whether to plump on Silva, likely knowing that he would be rested yesterday, or whether to go with Silva or whether to kind of leave it. And I made a decision on that day because Coutinho had Leeds and Leeds looked so awful. I went with him. Obviously, he absolutely smashed it, which really, really helped. And I did Cancelo to Rudiger yesterday and capped Rudiger, which was obviously fine. I've got Laporte, but I think it just harks back to what we've been saying for most of the season, Paul. I don't know how you feel about this, but I haven't done anything out of the ordinary, but through hopefully sensible play, just kind of organically gonna up your rank a fair way. Have you seen anything I've done which you think,
a couple of things, and it's less what you've done and more the surrounding sentiment. And I think it's like people are finding it harder to rise in rank. Now, right after the overhaul, I believe it was partly because there was a template, there was a massive template. I don't think that that's the case anymore. So we're going to go and look at the ownership stats just now, and there's a lot of variance in there. A lot of variance. There is a lot of, like, there is 2, 4, 6, 8 players owned by more than 50%, but they're not all owned by more than 80%. And I think that that's the difference. And your shout on Coutinho, if you look on Twitter or in WhatsApp chats, you would think Coutinho's ownership's 90% based on conversations that happen. When you picked him up last week, or sorry, you picked him up for Rafinha a few weeks back, but before his couple of big hauls recently, his ownership was at 20%. So only 1 in 5 managers in the top 1,000 owned him. So whilst he's not a low-owned player, he's not a high and he's not an low-owned player. So you're picking popular-ish players, but doing picking them up in a sensible order. So you're making fixture gains like here, there, picking up the extra games, almost buying the extra lottery tickets for those types of players that can be explosive. I think I think that's. I don't think that there's a template anymore, and I think if sensible play and sensible transfer usage can get the gains that you once couldn't get. Now, I take on board that this season, every season with Sky is getting diluted with more engaged managers coming across from other fantasy formats. I think that is the case and will continue to be the case, but I don't think that because there's a template, it's an excuse anymore, or a reason. Excuse, not the right word. Reason for it.
Yeah, I think as well it's easy, because I would say I think this season, across all fantasy formats, like obviously last year in Dream Team, I got incredibly fortunate, or rather my big moves really paid off. So far this year in Sky, they really haven't. I've been, kind of between 200 and 600 for nearly all season. But, a conscious thing I did this year, which I wouldn't have done in previous years, is just the patience of just, kind of taking almost my own advice and your advice of just waiting for the opportunities and just going with the crowd, because there will be opportunities. Obviously, captaining Coutinho last Thursday, it was I say it was a fluke. I would have captained Rudiger, but I suppose that's an opportunity I thought of. He was obviously banging form, Leeds awful defensively, and I just thought the ownership was so split between Silva, Rafinha, and everyone else. I thought, even if he doesn't kick on, it's not going to hurt my rank that much. Thankfully for me, he exploded. He had like a 14 point or whatever it was, but that doubled to 28, while a lot of others, I think Silva had 10, Rafinha had wherever it was 4 or 6 or whatever. That's the kind of opportunity which I talk about a lot in the season, is not looking for differentials for differential's sake, just looking for opportunities when you're not going to fall massively low in rank, but you've got an opportunity to fly in rank.
Yeah, and diverse captains. I think that's been a big thing as well, that you've picked the right captain when there's been a multitude of options for captain. So it's not like you've went against Salah or you've went against Kane, because you've not been playing like that. Exactly. What you've been playing is when there's been a split captaincy poll and you've got your Coutinho, Rafinha, like the options that you mentioned there, even the Chelsea defensive assets, you seem to have been picking up the best player on that day, along with it not being risky because you have owned the other players that were the potential captain shouts.
Yeah, that's just a question I'm gonna ask myself now, and it's very easy to get carried away and get excited. But obviously, at 200th, ish rank with likely, just above average transfers, I never had any designs on winning it. 88th, I suppose the question I'm asking myself now is, because I've still got above average transfers, I've got 12 or 13 left. Do I actually, I think I looked, I'm somewhere like, I don't know, like 100 points, 120 points off top. It's obviously still a massive amount. It's like, do I now actually just think, stuff it? Because I'm not in any massive Sky mini leagues other than a combo league. Do I actually just just go for it and just now try, because I've got myself in a reasonable spot, which I wasn't. Try and go for it. And I know, yeah,
Depends
go on.
if you want. No. So what I was to say, do you want to pitch this as the 3-for-1 podcast where both panelists have got top 100 finishes last season?
Yeah, it's a really good show. That is. Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm joking though. But you've just shown that you can make. Like, what do you mean? Go for it, because you've just shown that you can. You've just shown that you can pick a non-template team. You're one area that I'm terrible at, and I genuinely don't know how to get better at, is picking captains when a captain poll's not there to support my decisions. But you have that in your locker that you can pick, like, put yourself in a position to carry some luck with an educated decision. And there is no template, so your team's been performing well now. So unless people use transfers to get exactly the same team as you, there's still that opportunity for you to progress by playing the way you're playing.
I think even if I organically progress, I know there's a lot of top players in the top 50, top 100. Those still on my tail, right? Just for example, this evening, I'm saying all this now. This is prior to Cancelo playing this evening, who I don't own. I've got Laporte. I could be 150th down. If Laporte doesn't start, Cancelo gets a goal and a clean sheet, I could be all the way down again. But I suppose, I'll take stock. But I think if I keep playing the same way now, sensibly and organically, I'll only get so far. I'm not going to win it. You need to do something different to win, don't you? So maybe I'll carry on for a few weeks, and see if I get the shooting distance.
I think you'll definitely see those opportunities. Like a couple of guys I know that are really good Sky players, and this isn't a move that I would make, but they've both got more transfers than me, and it was a sensible thing to do. Was on Thursday brought in Havertz, captain Havertz, captain them on Sunday, and just turned around two massive hauls. And then because they've been storing transfers, then they just get rid. That's a sensible move. That's not apparent and not like the traditional obvious moves that I talk about. And that's an explosive option. And those opportunities will come up with the FPL style double game weeks coming up, where they rearrange, like those teams that don't play in Sky Game Week 32. I'll have the extra fixture later on. You'll find an opportunity to come off a player on a Saturday that doesn't have another game that week to a team that plays Sunday, Wednesday. And of that team, you'll find Liverpool play, like Liverpool or Chelsea or a City. So is that an opportunity to bring in Mahrez, knowing if you saw the team sheet on a Saturday, Sunday, or Mane, or again Havertz again, or these opportunities, and there's going to be more of these opportunities, whether or not you hit them at the right time and you get that ceiling that they're there. But there's definitely the ability to do that, especially if you've got one or two transfers above the average.
Yeah, interesting times. But yeah, nice to finally make a bit of traction, because it was getting a bit of a boring season. And I know from like the chat, Twitter, WhatsApp groups that people are feeling a little stale and jaded, as in they can't move. But it only takes one or two moves to really move forward. And you are right. So in terms of the ownership, looking now on screen, I do own, I think, 9 out of those 10 first players. The only one I don't own is Cancelo, but I've got the rest. But that obviously has progressed now with the informed players. The players who are scoring well, aren't they? Which makes sense. But you are right, in terms of there's only 2 players above 80% now, which are Salah and Kane, which is fairly obvious. And then every player except 4 then is under 60%. So there are gains there. What are observations, Paul, of the top 1 players at the moment?
There's big changes here. So looking back to since the last time we were on the pod, we had those Thursday night games, and we had the weekend, and then we've had the weekend games. And on the Thursday night, what was a popular thing is Thiago Silva's ownership went from practically 0 to 40%. So a lot of transfers getting used there. And I guess owners would be disappointed because he returned 5 points, doubled to 10, and then didn't play again on Sunday. His ownership's dropped back down to 33 now, and I don't know if that's players that brought him in dropping out of the top 1,000, or people just moving him on, getting
onto Rudiger.
Well, potentially, because they wanted him. They wanted the Chelsea player. We were saying last week, if a Chelsea defender started the 2 games, I think they were the standout captain option on both days, and therefore, if Rudiger, I would have probably dismantled my team to get Rudiger in, which, looking at it in hindsight now, sounds crazy. I was sat on Thursday night thinking I could make 3 moves here. And then I was like, that voice back in my head of what I say on all pods is like, if I'm in doubt about anything, and I was, because Rudiger wasn't playing, I was like, just don't do anything. It'll probably, my element of being pissed off with myself if I made the moves and I didn't get the gains would far outweigh my jubilation if the defender I got in scored a goal as my captain.
It's like saving for a mortgage and then blowing it on one night on a stripper in Vegas. The equivalent, right? Saving for years for a mortgage and just going, stuff it. I'm just going to do that.
That'll be the best night ever.
It would be the best night ever.
Yeah. But yeah, so I sat thinking that. Sorry, I know I'm diverging from what the purpose of this was, to talk about the ownership. So, so people had got Rudiger in advance as well, hadn't they? So they would have been annoyed come Thursday night having made that move earlier. And this is what I've been saying to myself, and it's more COVID than anything else this season is. Look, if I'm wanting the player for captaincy down the line, don't try and be overly smart by bringing them in for a difficult game that I'm not going to captain them in before the game that's coming up that I need them. I mean, that would be the sensible play in previous seasons. I say sensible, but then fingers have been burnt by the.
I don't know if it is though. I wonder whether this season with COVID has highlighted that is a really positive change in strategy. Because look at Fraser. Fraser's a prime example as well. He may be fit for the game on Thursday, but he was on the bench on the weekend, wasn't he? And those who brought him in Thursday, it's a sensible move. That's nothing to do with COVID. That's just the fact that he just got a knock wherever he got. So I actually think it's enhanced the way we look at the game, like indirectly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's not that it throws planning out the window, because I think the biggest planning thing now is to have a flexible team in which you can, like, the price points and the formation to move on to
exactly.
Again, I probably said it a couple of times before about the Broja situation. That's kind of caused people a lot of problems and having to move multiple players around to then get the player in that they want to get in. So other than that, the Arsenal players have kind of had a jump up. So you got Ramsdale up at 47%. You have Gabriel's at 21%, so not too much of an increase for him. And then Saka went up from like low 30s to 45.6 yesterday as well. So a few Sky managers making that move. That makes sense to me because there were good captaincy options yesterday, but they've also got the game against Liverpool, which I think won't be as straightforward for Liverpool as perhaps what was anticipated maybe a couple of weeks ago. And then you've got the Aston Villa game. So you've got a couple more Arsenal games before international break. So then there's no Chelsea. So it was, if you're bringing in a Chelsea player yesterday or you're bringing in an Arsenal player yesterday, you're getting 3 games out the Arsenal player to the one Chelsea, which also went through my mind when I was thinking about whether bringing Rudiger or not. But I've got a plan now for transfers, because I held on to Kilman, who dropped from 73% to 51%. Now it's hard to say that he punished Sky managers, because I think a lot of people might have moved on to Ramsey, which can equal like eaksy peaksy on points, and that probably did give them a better structure in their team, albeit takes away that captaincy potential on the Wolves Newcastle Friday night game, which a lot of people might have been earmarking them for, but then maybe they'll use a Newcastle player this Thursday to subsidise that.
Just interested in what you said. Just wanted to pick up, on what you said. And I do think that there's a couple of factors. I say this on the Dream Team pod around sometimes the most successful moves you make, the ones you don't make. I think that's fair to say. But also in regards to Ward-Prowse and Broja, and it could have gone the other way, right? But all being equal, Ward-Prowse and Broja have, barely scored any points. If they'd have both scored a lot of points, it would have been the same thing. Just in terms of that move to go for Ward-Prowse over Broja for me is one of the most, and I'm not talking about that specific move. I mean that kind of move where you make the move based on structure rather than maybe who you think is going to score the most points at. I think the moves you don't make in terms of the discipline, sit on your hands, think about it, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to wait till next week, and those structural moves are as effective over the course of a season as the move for, say, bringing in Salah and captain in for a hat-trick in a one-off game. I really think
I'd argue you were talking about Dream Team. I'd argue Telegraph, that's probably even more important in terms of the structure because you're not covering the captaincies and stuff. But yeah, I think so. And you probably saved yourself a transfer down the line by doing that as well. Like, because of players that you were potentially getting in, you might have had to make one or two moves scattered over time to get there. Instead, that you've managed to do it in limited moves. It's
crazy how this it's like a war of attrition in it. Like Sky is and we've said it a few times, and it's not till you actually see it in action that you can maybe appreciate it. But it is a war of attrition. It is who blinks first a lot of the time, and it's who can hold their nerve. And
do you remember who was it last season that there was a decision to be made after the first overhaul? Was it last season or the season before? And it was Pepe or Aubameyang, and it was West Ham players. It was Antonio and someone, and the people that went one way got absolutely so badly punished when it was a very, very 55-45 decision. Yeah. And it was this combination or this combination, and you needed to pick players from each of those teams to cover your captaincy. And then it just so happened that on the captaincy day, the one combination, both of those players hauled, and on the other combination, they didn't. And maybe, again, I think structure came into that because Aubameyang was at a price that he was a premium price up front. So when you were going to move on Aubameyang, that opened up your Kane, your Salah, your other options there. And therefore, it seemed to make more sense doing it that way. But
it is, and it's definitely something over the last 2 seasons, especially this whole structure thing. I'm doing it in Telegraph this year. Did it, in Dream Team last year. I've tried to this year, and in Sky this year. And my overall results in those games, FPL is difficult because your structure is more or less fixed, right? But on those other 3 games, structure for me has got, we all know the best players. That's not even a debate a lot of the time, right? You all know who to pick. How you manage your team and your transfers most effectively through the best players, I think, is how how you get successful in the game. But anyway, we talked about this for a while, but it is interesting because it's starting to manifest itself now. I think that's the in all formats.
I think I was like playing my own violin about making the Gabriel move last week, and I actually think for team structure that now, and I know it's easy to say after he's just got a 9-pointer at the weekend, I'm still not convinced that his passing potential is as high as what I would like it to be. He picked up tier 1 against Leicester the weekend, but I think it helps my team structure having him in there, because I'm going to eventually go for 5 big at the back and a 5-3-2 formation, or that's where I want to get to anyway with my planned moves that I've got coming up. But I think at his price point of that 8 million, knowing Arsenal are looking a bit more resolute, I'm maybe a little bit. Well, I'm much more happier than what I was last week with that move as well.
Good. Okay, let's have a quick look back at the matches for this week. So we start off with the games on Saturday, Paul.
Yeah, so covered off the Thursday dilemma, and a lot of people moved on to Thiago Silva. So I'm thinking about ownership as well as point scoring. So when we came into the Brighton-Liverpool game, I think Liverpool defence sat at about 120% effective ownership. So if you're sitting on one, it's no longer feels as bad anymore. If you're if Liverpool are keeping a clean sheet, especially in the Brighton game, Brighton keep a lot of possession. Therefore, Van Dijk wasn't guaranteed passing bonus. Neither was Matip, although he did get the assist, so he picked up a nice 10-pointer there. So only owning Trent and not owning Van Dijk didn't feel as detrimental to me as what it had done a couple of weeks back, which I was more than happy with. And it was actually Trent's numbers that have come down overall as opposed to Van Dijk's, because he's still sat around 40%. And then most people were on Salah captain or Kane captain. There was only 3 points difference in the two of them that day. Salah picked up a 10-pointer. Kane picked up 7 just with that single shot. So he didn't pick up the shots bonus, he just picked up the goal in that game. So I was, there wasn't much else to talk about. Pope picking up a 1-pointer away to Brentford was frustrating for me, because I could have done the Ramsdale move a week before, and I'm only net 3 down from not doing it early. So I was okay with that. So yeah, big player ownership. Pope, those that had him have seemingly moved off, because he's down 11% and he was at 30-odd% on Saturday. So people finally lost patience or looked to play the volume of fixtures. I think a few might have moved on to Mendy yesterday as well. Picked up a nice 9-pointer, I think. I'm getting ahead of myself in days here. So yeah, just the 3 games on Saturday. I didn't think there was much movement because the majority of people captain Salah, and those differentials around didn't perhaps do well. So your Kulusevski did okay. Son didn't do anything. So there wasn't any real hauls from differential players. Ronaldo, but he's so only owned now in the top 1,000 that it didn't make much difference at all.
His fixtures pick up massively in a couple of weeks. Man United's, they've got 3 home games out of 5. I think it's Leicester, Brentford, and Norwich. I can see a big swing back there in a couple of weeks. Just by the by, a hat trick does that, both in terms of fantasy minds, but also for a team and the player themselves as well. I think we're going to see
something to play for.
Yeah.
It's like you and I, and particularly me, have talked about fixture volume, but we've not talked about that element. I think Liam Dorian mentioned it on pod before, and he's mentioned it a couple of times on WhatsApp groups that I'm in, about the on the beach type mentality and not picking players from teams that have got something, that haven't got something to play for. And Man United do have something to play for, so there could be value in doing that move. Still not keen on it myself. But
I reckon in a month's time, when we're sat on this podcast, I think Ronaldo will be, as long as he's fit, obviously, 70% owned.
No.
Yeah. Why wouldn't he be? Why wouldn't he be with those fixtures?
Because I just think with the team structure and the way people pick, and I still wouldn't comfortably pick him at home to one of the worst teams in the league over picking Salah against anybody. I think
depends when the games fall. Yeah, I think you're right there.
Yeah.
But,
and there might be the same the opportunity that I was talking about earlier about this. Kane plays on a Saturday, Ronaldo, Man United play on the Sunday and perhaps the Wednesday, and then Wednesday's a standout captaincy option. Those where a lot of transfers might do like some moves like that, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when we get the fixtures, obviously, because that's going to dictate most of the rest of the season. Then, isn't it? It's going to be interesting. On to the games on Sunday. Chelsea scraped past Newcastle. Havertz should have had a red card, maybe. Owner's lucky, Paul. Do you think? Or
it was somewhere in the middle, wasn't it? And I think once he'd given the yellow, he was never going to overturn it.
Yeah.
Because you can't. I don't think you can definitely say that there was intent, but the penalty, like,
I
can't understand how that's not a penalty. It's ridiculous. You could have given 2 penalties for it.
Madness, isn't it?
It's nuts.
It's the swings. Those two. You were talking about fantasy swings. Those 2 decisions of not to give Havertz a red and not to give a penalty will have massively affected people's overall seasons now, won't they? It's crazy.
Well, if you look at your position, you captain Rudiger, right? So if they're giving away the penalty, then not only have you got Rudiger as what I'd class as a differential, he's sitting at 40%, so probably doesn't fit what the traditional differential sense is, but he's still not more than 50% owned, so you're making a gain on 50% managers, not once but twice, because you've captained them. And that'd get pulled away under the rug if that was to come in. So yeah, massive swings there. Yeah, Havertz picked up man of the match, and I think it's difficult to argue when you look at the game as a whole.
Yeah.
It was a bit bitty, and there was some decentest performances more from midfield options, I thought. I thought Dan Burn had an excellent game until the goal as well. But then, what defines man of the match? One bit of world class first touch and a great finish as well. I don't think you can really argue with that. But the whole swing of he could have been sent off is probably what sticks more in people's minds.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
go on, sorry.
And I know some people moved early on Dubravka as well, so he was people's Pope's replacement, and that obviously really unlucky as well. And, he didn't look under too much threat the majority of the game, and then 88th minute lose a clean sheet. It's not. I don't know why I always default back to it's 5 points for a clean sheet for goalkeepers, but that's 7 points. 7 points. Old Sky rules. Yeah, 7 point loss there. Everton Wolves, mentioned Kilman earlier on, picked up passing bonus as well. So a nice 9 pointer there. I think you're unlucky if you moved Kilman on to someone other than Ramsey.
Yeah, Ramsey, yeah.
Because there was no inclination that he'd come back in. So you could understand why people might have used him as part of a makeshift for moves on Thursday night, probably more so than Saturday, because I don't think there was any more new appealing players on Saturday that were within the price budget move there. But yeah, Kilman returned. A lot of people went back to the well for Sa. I don't think that was it's proved to not be a bad move. Back-to-back clean sheets. He also has the extra fixture this weekend coming up against Leeds on the Friday night. So those that don't own Rafinha or haven't or got rid of Kilman, again, it's a good option for captaincy there. So well done to those managers. Leeds, Rafinha could have had a triple point return.
Unbelievable.
But at least, I would say, he picked up man of the match. So it softens the blow for Sky managers, because an 8 point return, whilst could have been much, much more, at least got some consolation at the end there. And then Southampton, Watford, it's the end of the line for Broja, and a lot of people will be looking to move Ward-Prowse on as well, I think.
Yeah, looking at the fixtures now, Southampton, they've got Leeds on Saturday, but obviously a couple of teams play twice in that time. And then they run into Chelsea and Arsenal back-to-back after that. So they're going to have some tough ones there. So, yeah, I had a good look yesterday because I did Cancelo to Rudiger. And I just short of being able to now daisy chain from Ward-Prowse back to Cancelo. I'm like 0.3 short. So I'm probably going to leave it now regardless this evening. But that was kind of part of my thinking is after the break, I'm obviously going to want him back at some point. Though they do play, so their matches, they're away to Palace this evening, which I'm hoping Laporte will play and hopefully cover him anyway. Away to Burnley, first one back, which probably be an easiest game you'd guess actually. I'm not sure what time. It's not the early game. Liverpool Watford's early, so don't get to see the lineups, but that'll be an interesting one. Then they got Liverpool, so I think I've got a decision to make of whether to kind of get him back in immediate. Maybe do a double move. I also have to think about Everton Newcastle. So for example, could do Ward-Prowse to a Newcastle player, and that'll allow me to then do someone else back up to Cancelo or wherever else. But
and then you'd have to then factor in the Newcastle. Who does the Newcastle player go for? Because I'm suspecting that you wouldn't want to keep the Newcastle player through till the end anyway.
No, so on Friday the 8th, they've got Wolves. So I've already got Kilman, but they've got 4 fit centre-backs now, Wolves, haven't they? Seiss, Bolly, Kilman and Cody. It's very hard to think who's, so I'm thinking of maybe keeping a Newcastle player potentially. They've got Everton obviously midweek, which is good, a good fixture actually. But then away to Spurs, who defensively are no great shakes in that Wolves game. So maybe after, I just think my word of warning there would be that that's 3 moves that you're almost backing yourself. I know you're not backing yourself into it has to be this player to this player, but then if you're earmarking, if you're considering the Cancelo move in by the Newcastle player you're getting in, you're almost saying I'm going to get rid of someone for Cancelo, but I'm not going to use Kilman or the Newcastle player to do that.
and therefore after the following Friday night, I want to get rid of those two players, because Wolves go on a very mixed run. I think their good fixtures are away from home and their poor fixtures are at home.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
and then that's 3 moves that you've kind of pushed yourself into, and there might be injuries and stuff like that coming up.
But there's only six sets of games left, though. Mind, I think that is something to consider as well. Is this, we'll talk about it next. It's a really interesting part, actually, which we'll talk about. But it's that whole finding that perfect trajectory of transfer use against finding your way as high leaderboard as you can. And we got a big section on this now, which we'll touch on. I think people can hold them back a bit too much sometimes, and then obviously the worst you can do is spunk them all, right, and just use them. You end up really high and then you just fall away, which I did a couple of seasons ago. But I also think there is a thing where if you're not optimally using them, you can hold on to them and not really get the gains, because you're not guaranteed points by transfers either. But anyway, last games yesterday, West Ham and Villa. Obviously, Ramsey got the goal at the death for a 10-pointer in Sky, I think it was, on it, or 11-pointer maybe.
Yeah. And you got tackle. Yeah, you got tackle bonus as well, didn't you? So nice return for him. And Coutinho, I thought there was a mistake at the source. I had to look after 30 odd minutes, and it was sitting at 18. And then 2 minutes later, it ticked up, and it was like 39. And I was like, I wonder if they've just done a typo on whatever source that everything's getting driven by. Granted, I didn't watch the game. I watched the Chelsea game, but
67 passes crazy. He got yesterday. What the hell's going on there?
Like, almost feels like Bruno-esque, doesn't it? Like he's dropping back into.
If it is that though, I think that that's quite exciting for owners, because it's another pretty unexpected scoring bow in his armory, isn't it? So obviously West Ham, Ben Ram had a couple of assists, and not much going on there with Antonio going off and Bowen not fit. And Arsenal, Leicester, Ramsdale 11-pointer, banged in 11-pointer, back to the old days. And Gabriel, 9-pointer, managed to scrape 60 passes, Paul.
Yeah, he was on much more than that, and then they removed loads of passes afterwards. Yeah. I have no idea how they go back and retrospectively check or what. But one thing I did notice, which I'm saying I'm happy with Gabriel. If I was looking to bring in an Arsenal defender, I'd pick White over him currently. He seems to be the one that's getting the ball, the ball out from Ramsdale. He's tackle, he hasn't picked up tackle bonus, I don't think, but he's been close to it a few times, and he seems to have much more attacking threat than what he recently had as well.
Interesting.
And he's cheaper, so yeah, I definitely, if I was bringing in an Arsenal player, I don't think Gabriel's the standout option he once was over White.
Okay, you've earmarked 4 players, Paul, who you think may be leaving a lot of teams soon, and also 4 players you think may be entering a lot of teams soon. Just want to run through these.
Yep. So the 4 players I've mentioned that I think will go out, we've talked about Ward-Prowse and Broja. There's no more Southampton fixtures before international break. They do play Leeds on the Saturday when they come back, but their fixtures aren't great, and they don't have any fixtures to be rearranged, or many fixtures to be arranged. So you can't even play the fixture volume in the card, like I've alluded to before. So I think Ward-Prowse, Broja are 2 players that are likely to come out. Pope, I think will also be popular if there's still 11% of managers that own him in the top 1,000. I'm not convinced I wouldn't still go for Ramsdale, even though feel like I might have missed the boat, because they've got 2 games still before or Spurs or Lloris before the international break as well. So more opportunities to pick up points there. And then the last one, maybe more controversially, and I think it's more on what could be as opposed to what has been, is Rafinha. So he plays on the Friday night, and he might be someone that would make way for, be a makeshift for an Aston Villa or Arsenal asset. If you don't have Saka, Ramsey, Coutinho, he might be one that fantasy managers have just had enough of. I think a lot of that will come down to how he scores on Friday night
Yeah,
As a,
I don't personally see that with Rafinha because when they come back, the two fixtures they've got Southampton and Watford, who are both shipping a lot of goals at the moment.
I picked him before yesterday's game, and I think it was the perceived attitude that he's had
on Thursday. It was
it?
awful, wasn't it, against Villa? Yeah, that's fair.
Just throwing up the arms, and then he might have I don't think it would be. I wouldn't have been, people wouldn't have been. It wouldn't be a far outcry if he had been dropped yesterday, just based on his attitude alone. But and then 4 players I think will be popular coming in. If St Maximin starts on Thursday, I think he might be a popular daisy chain move from Ward-Prowse. He's cheaper than Ward-Prowse, plays the same position, so you don't have that constraint of formation. So move there. You get the captaincy, you get the single game against Tottenham, and then you get the captaincy against Wolves if you don't want a Wolves player on the Friday night, and then you can move on there. So if you were getting rid of Ward-Prowse anyway, you're basically only using one transfer. It's not an in-out type scenario to move back to the player you came from. Martinelli, I thought he's looked really interesting from an Arsenal point of view. If you want a differential, like we were talking, Saka's popular and defensive assets, but Martinelli at his price offers like a nice route into the Arsenal team. He's cheaper than Saka as well. Chris Wood, I had contemplated getting Chris Wood in, and I think I've completely gone off the idea. And I was fully accepting that he could return 2 against Everton, doubled, 2 against Tottenham, and 2 against Wolves, doubled, 10 points, and taking Ward-Prowse out for him and then moving back to someone else. And if I got 10 points off him, I'd be like, well, okay, it's not like. So it's based on fixture volume and picking up even just the appearance points. I know it doesn't equate to the value of what I put on a transfer, because 1 goal in one of those captaincy days, like, obviously makes that those figures. And Wood comes across as a purple patch player for me. I know he didn't do much against Chelsea there, but he did get the goal against Southampton, so he would have done his confidence good. They're playing Everton, who are woeful. So I think that he could be, I wouldn't say explosive, but he gives if you've got a lot of transfers and you're moving on someone like Broja or Ward-Prowse, he could form a decent daisy chain move. And then the last one, Jacob Ramsey, whose ownership's massive now. But if you're looking to restructure your team and gain an extra fixture before doing so, then moving someone onto him, like if you're on a 4-3-3, moving Broja onto Ramsey to then allow you to move a midfielder onto a defender further down the line might be, again, an opportunity.
Yeah, I think if you want to end up with 5 at the back, I think Ramsey probably a must-have. I think I can't think of anyone else.
Well, yeah, if you're wanting to get rid of Kilman long term, and get five bonus magnets at the back, then I think having Ramsey as your makeshift, your kind of enabler, then that makes sense. And even if you slowly get there by making 1 move this week to then make 1 move after the international break, that makes sense to me.
Just having a quick look, and I can do if I did Ward-Prowse to St Maximum on Thursday, as you said, which I think will be that, maybe not that exact move, but a move along those lines will be quite a popular move. It then means I can move on all my midfield on one of those onto Cancelo, including you mentioned Rafinha maybe. So I like that move. And it then puts me in a 5-3-2 with Kilman, and only 1 Chelsea. But yeah, just to think about.
But your budget will be somewhere because you've got the enabler in midfield.
Yeah.
So you'll have money. Like you'll have money freed up. If you move to Ramsey at some point, you'd have money freed up to move Kilman up.
I don't have Ramsey, sorry, but yeah, I think Ramsey is a really good move. Regardless, right? He's scoring points. Well, he scored 109 points this season, which is higher than any of the other three you mentioned to bring in. So he's, I think, in his own right, he's a decent option. I wish I'd gone for him overhaul, but I say that if I had gone for him, I may not have gone for Coutinho. So it's swings and roundabouts. Thank you, Paul. Some really good options there. Average transfers remaining. So for those who saw, this was obviously pre this weekend. But the top 10, 8.7. Top 100, 10.7. Top 1,000, 11.7. Top 5,000, 10.2. And Ian Parrin put a really interesting tweet yesterday. If you don't follow Ian, make sure you do, at Planet Sky. And Ian suggested that in terms of transfer count analysis, if you've got under 7 or under rather, then you're looking a bit tight. If you've got between 8 and 11, he thinks you've got a workable amount of transfers. If you've got 12 to 15, you are handy. And if you've got 16 plus, you are golden. And it was a big mixture of opinion and debate in it. Really, really good tweet. Well done there, Ian. Paul, what are your thoughts on the average left and Ian's analysis?
Yeah, so the average left will have taken another hit as well, because I know a lot of people moved on to the Chelsea assets yesterday. And a lot of people did pop to Ramsdale. A lot of people brought in Saka. So it wouldn't surprise me if they've taken another one, taken at least another one down as we come to this weekend, which kind of sits along the averages that we projected last week based on the volume of games left. Sounds about right. If you're sitting kind of 9, 10-ish, then that's in line with the average. I liked Ian's the terms that he's put for each. So
brilliant.
So 7 or under does feel a bit tight, because it's almost you're dictated to on what moves to make based on injuries and such, or if a player comes, it's obvious that you'd want to captain them 2 times in a row. Say the scenario came up where a team played on the Monday night at the tail end of a game week, and then they played on the Friday, and it was the same team, and it was a team that's not popular usually, like a Burnley. All right, that looks like Pope, you have to get Pope in. And almost having that volume of transfer almost dictates roughly what you need to do. And 8 to 11 workable makes sense. Again, you're sitting about the average. So you've got the opportunity to do 1 or 2 kind of differentials whilst taking on board what I'd mentioned there for the tight moves. And then handy 12 to 15, you've got a lot more flexibility in what you're doing. Again, a couple more potential explosive opportunities. The 16 plus golden is quite interesting, because if you're sensible about your transfer use, that's not a problem, and it is golden. But if I think there's almost a potential downturn to that, in that to get in players more freely, you can perhaps take away. Say you've got a 90% owned player that consistently pulls back points, like Trent, it's 75%. You could almost do 3-for-1s with Trent and move back on him. But in that one game that Trent, you don't own Trent for, he could return a 20-pointer quite easily. And there's always a fear of doing that towards the end of the season. Now, I'm not saying that all managers will be like that, and a lot of them will be more coy and we'll use them the same way as people use engaged managers use transfers anyway, and just do it in volumes, and that would probably work a lot more as well. But I think that does feel right terminology wise across the board there.
Yeah, I think it's fair. What do you think about those who've got maybe 16 plus transfers now, but they're nowhere near where they want to be? So let's just say someone's target is they want a top 100 finish, and they're 2000th with 18 transfers left. What would your advice be there?
At that stage, I think at that rank, I think you'd have to play
you're cooked.
Really lucky. You'd have to be real lucky. You'd have to be really lucky. You'd have to pick a few captaincy options against Salah and against Kane on obvious days where people are blowing Captain Salah and Captain Kane, and try and hit lucky. I think
I would love you, Paul, to do a bit of analysis in the summer, and I don't know if you'll have the time. But I tell you what would be an incredible exercise. I don't even know if you could do it, or or how long it would take, or even if you want to do it, I'm sure you'd rather be up a mountain with your dog. But kind of plotting out almost what an optimal journey would have been this season, if you know what I mean. So if you'd have done this move at this point, if you'd have done this at this point, that would have been the optimal journey for this season. It just may give us some clues on this, because there's obviously there's no right answer, and that would obviously be the right answer for this one. But we had some kind of mock-up of what that a trajectory of transfers versus getting yourself to number one by right at the end of the season, game week 30.
It's almost like the hub need a data analyst.
Almost, or we just ask you to do it, Paul, out of the goodness of your heart. But I think they did it on FISO for Telegraph one year, and they, and it was actually less transfers left than you think towards the end for that kind of optimal line. It's not like, save 10 to the end and then smash on the FA Cup final, which is what everyone thinks. It wasn't that. It was very much a very, a very steady sort of line, which just went down. And I would guess be the same in Sky, to be honest. But anyway,
yeah, I think that was the conclusions that you and I had drawn before when we were talking about if you stay in line, like the value of a transfer on average, and you have to use on average because I really dislike it when people make arguments based on a one game sample size and then try and disprove averages based on that. Right? And this is what, and this particularly in Sky, I think, is that you have to have the luck with the explosive type players on those midfield slots with the 2-2-10 options that I'm saying. Like, you've done well with Coutinho. Like, you've got him at the right time and you've captained him in the right games. And it's not an unobvious move to have done that, but you've timed it really, really well in doing it. And I think you have to catch those two. Like, if you were in that 16 plus and you were, hovering around kind of 1,000 to 2,000 bracket to make massive gains, I think you need to roll a bit with that. And the further back you are, the more likely you're going to have to bet against Kane or Salah at some point in time.
Cool. Lovely stuff, Paul. Let's have a quick look to the fixtures that are coming up. So obviously this evening, Palace and Man City. So Cancelo will be, the overwhelming captain, assuming he starts, because obviously I think he's back in training on Saturday, wasn't he?
Here's one for you, Fergi. Right? I'm sitting with Cancelo and Laporte. Right? Do I want Cancelo to be benched tonight?
Yes, you do. I think, because one, the
only thing is that you don't. Go on. The only thing is that you don't own Cancelo.
See, I thought he didn't play against me. I thought you don't care.
I'm joking.
No, I think you want him. You want him to be benched because it gives other managers a very difficult decision, and you'll probably climb right.
So it's either transfer used to catch up, or I'm getting double a good consistent option against nothing. Yeah. Or Gallagher. Some people might have Gallagher.
Wondercat Venus just put an interesting comment in the chat. Paul will have plenty of time in the summer. Sleepless nights equal early morning analysis. There's me, Paul. Wednesday, 16th of March. Brighton against Spurs. Arsenal against Liverpool. Quite a tight one here, maybe between Kane and Salah. Maybe tighter than it would have been a year or so ago. Yeah, a year or so ago, a week or so ago. Sorry.
Here's another question for you. If you had loads of transfers and Salah was ruled out, Salah to Son to double up for a couple of games, knowing that you'd have to move back to Salah, and I'm talking if you're on 16 plus transfers, two games against West Ham, who have been mixed fortunes recently.
Not for me, I don't think. Not, but it's because it's not a captaincy involved. I think away to Brighton. Brighton are quite hot and cold, and then West Ham. If it was Norwich and Burnley, maybe, but I don't really see it with those two games. And Son looked a little bit, I wouldn't say off it, but he certainly wasn't at his best on the weekend.
He has got explosive potential,
and you want Salah back because they're home to Watford first game back, so he will be the absolute overwhelming captain on that first game back. I think if Salah maybe had, say Kane had an easy game first game back and Salah didn't. Say Salah, was that Man City game was there, I think you could do a 3-for-1 there maybe, or even a 4-for-1 if it felt like that. But just to use 2 transfers for 2 games.
What about if it was a player that you wanted to get in anyway, and therefore you're making a daisy chain move?
Maybe.
So you're going Salah to Son if you wanted Son. I guess another argument would be like Saka or something like that. So if you did Salah to Saka, and then you got rid of the player that you want to get rid of, and moved him back to Salah, if he starts against Watford, because you get to see the lineup as well, right?
Absolutely. So. I think that's perfectly viable. I just because that's you're using 2 transfers, but you were getting them in almost anyway, wasn't you?
Well, it's one transfer that you were planning on using anyway, and you're using 1 extra transfer, and can you make the points up in that 1 extra, like with additional players that you're going to have?
But then you're getting an extra game or so off Son, then, aren't you, as well? Because you'd probably leave him in because of their volume, because they've got home to Newcastle, and then they got Villa, Brighton, Brentford. They got a really good run, Spurs, haven't they? But anyway. So it will be Salah at the moment for you, Paul.
If he starts, and and what's easy about this is if it's not Salah, then it'll be Kane. So
just
I don't. Maybe it's not clean. Maybe it's not as clean cut, even if Salah does start.
It's going to be an ownership one. That's the thing, and because of ownership one, it's going to be Salah. There's no way in the world that Kane will be more than 30%.
I think it'll be close. I think it'll be closer.
Not in the polls.
Maybe closer. But...
Interesting question off Mark Wright. How about moving off a City defender for Son? So Spurs will have a 3-for-1, which is home to West Ham. A 4-for-1. Spurs got a 4-for-1 over Man City after this evening. Man City played Burnley. Spurs play Brighton, West Ham, Newcastle and Villa before City play Liverpool and Man City. I didn't see that. That's an interesting one. Breaking news.
There's opportunity there.
Massive opportunity there. And then City's next game back after Burnley is against Liverpool. So
and it's on the Sunday if you want to move a different player in as well.
That's an interesting one because I've got Laporte. Don't know if I could maybe. Well, I might have a look at that one. A 4-for-1 is big, right?
Well, you got Kulusevski as well. So is it a player that you wouldn't mind holding all the way through to the end of the season?
Wow, something to think on there for sure. Thursday, Everton Newcastle. We kind of touched on it briefly already. Everton look absolute dross. Newcastle look okay. Probably a bit unfortunate on the weekend, I would say. I think when we first looked at this a few weeks ago, we were all over Everton. I think now people are looking at Newcastle players. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would be doing it as part of a daisy chain move of a player that you want to get rid of. If I was doing it, as opposed to taking out a player that I want to do it to bring back the player that I want. I probably wouldn't do it if it was that case. But if it was the former as opposed to the latter, then I would consider it.
Yeah. So I think Maximavi start is probably best option. If he seems to have a half decent game, he tends to get like shot bonus and man of the match, regardless whether they score or not. Are you eyeing up anyone from that game, Paul? Sort of interest?
If I was based on my formation, so I'm on 5-3-2. So if I was getting rid of Ward-Prowse, it would have to be either Fraser, who I just don't trust injury-wise, fitness-wise, or St Maximin, who I also don't trust fitness or injury-wise either, but is a more enjoyable player to watch, isn't he?
Yeah, you're right. Just interested one actually from Dave Perrin said Liverpool City, which is currently down for the Sunday the 10th, might move back to the Saturday. So forward to the Saturday. So it may only be a 3-for-1 that Man City and Spurs, where everyone blows a load of transfers on Spurs players. But even then, still it is still that it's Liverpool and City, and then Spurs are home to Brighton after that. So depending how that. I don't think we're going to know how the fixtures fall for Spurs on the 16th of April, because if then Spurs play on the Saturday against Brighton, for example, and City on the Wolves, it's still a 5-for-2 then, and one of them is Liverpool. So interesting. I think I'm tempted by Ward-Prowse to St. Maximin. I think that might be my move this week. It also gives me a backup then for Newcastle and Wolves on the 8th, because I have Kilman, but as we said, we're a little bit unsure, so it gives me double bubble there too. Mark Daniels has just put as well, Brentford versus Spurs likely to move to Monday the 25th of April. Yeah, I saw that this morning. I think I can't think you put it, but as this Spurs, obviously, I think as Spurs have got really good fixtures and the highest fixture counts left, will probably be holding on to at least Kane as a minimum, won't we? So nice easy one to navigate there. This is a long old pod, Paul. We're in an hour already. We haven't even touched on the questions yet. Just looking at this weekend. So 4 games this weekend ahead of the international break. Wolves and Leeds. Kilman, Rafinha, Sarr. What are your thoughts on this one?
I would have in order Rafinha, Sarr, Kilman.
You go Rafinha over a Wolves defender. Yeah. I don't think I would.
Or go over it. I'd go over the Wolves. I'd definitely go over the Wolves defender. The keeper's slightly different because of the. Basically, I don't think any of the defenders will pick up passing bonus.
Of course. Yeah, really good point. That is actually.
And I think Rafinha's ownership and the points that he should have collected over the last 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, that's fair.
Means if you owned them, I think we'd want to captain him. And I think Sarr, based on kind of saves bonus and the extra points for clean sheet, if they were to get a clean sheet, puts him ahead of the Wolves defenders. I know that Leeds concede a lot from set pieces, so you could argue that kind of Cody and Kilman fit in there, but I think in that order for me anyway.
Villa versus Arsenal, the only game on Saturday, 12:30 game, the only Premier League game on Saturday.
That's interesting. I don't know that Coutinho's not the best option. I don't know him. I think I would maybe rank him as the best option.
Yeah, I think the thing with Arsenal, I know they kept a clean sheet yesterday, but say Ramsdale did have to pull off a few saves. I think he made 3 saves. They haven't kept a clean sheet for a little while. Arsenal. I think we mentioned this last week, didn't we? So I think he's a decent option as well this day. Villa playing well. They lost on the weekend, but still think they play well on the crest of a wave. Arsenal are playing well as well. I suppose down to ownership of Arsenal players. So I'll have Ramsdale and Saka and Coutinho. I'd feel again when I look at that. So that's the kind of day I think. Well, if I've got Ramsdale and Saka anyway, not a lot of people will have that. A small percentage will have that combination, especially with Coutinho. Even if Coutinho blanks and Arsenal do well, I still don't think I lose a lot of rank anyway. So is it worth going for Coutinho?
Other than Ramsey, you'll have the 3 most owned players in that fixture. So you're saying that the downside of you captaining any of them isn't that high because
exactly
because you can't be overly punished. You can't be doubly punished. You can only be singly punished.
But I can doubly fly up the ranks.
Yes.
So this is an exact opportunity of where we talk about this, right? So even if
this is where I can't pick a captain.
Yeah. So you got 3 Arsenal, or 2 or 3 Arsenal.
3 Arsenal. Yeah.
So you're hoping for an comfortable Arsenal away win there, Paul, with lots of passing. Sunday the 20th, Leicester against Brentford. Interesting one. Could be an entry point potentially for Leicester and Spurs and West Ham. You'd imagine Kane would be the most popular captain.
Who would you bring in? I genuinely don't know.
For Leicester,
yeah,
I like Maddison, and I think the only reason why he hasn't been performing well of late, he hasn't played a lot of games because of his injury. But I personally think Maddison is a fantastic option. He's probably their only option at the moment, I would say.
Barnes.
But problem with Barnes is he's incredibly streaky, but then I suppose if you do hit him on a good streak, which is all you want him for, really, then he could be good. Yeah, he nearly scored on the weekend. Oh, against Ramsdale, wasn't it? Had a really good header, saved by Ramsdale. Yeah, I think other than those 2, I'm struggling. Definitely not defensively.
Yeah, I just think that this is so we're talking volume games, so we're talking about getting on Leicester because they're likely to have single game days coming up. and I'm just not, and I'm going to I would be captaining Kane anyway, that I wouldn't want to take the risk in bringing a Leicester player here, knowing that when it comes up to the captaincy day, the player might not start.
Yeah.
I do think that if they keep progressing in Europe, and it appears that Europe's the only, like, European competition is the only entry point to European competition next season, that there's no reason why they wouldn't prioritise that and perhaps rest some players in the league.
I think as well, when we get the April fixtures, this is the problem, is at the moment, because we've only got the fixtures for the next 2 game weeks now, haven't we, really? It's very hard to say, there's a 4-for-1 or there's where we simply don't know. When this information lands, we'll be a lot clearer on whether there will be these massive fixture gains.
Not bringing a player in unless it was the like for a future captaincy requirement, if you weren't going to captain them on the day that you're bringing them in.
Good shout. So probably leave that one then. Let's run through a few questions we've had in. Thank you so much to everyone who has sent in some questions. We haven't got time to go through all of them, but let's go through some. Dave, simple goal. You have to pick 5 defenders to last from now until the end of the season. No transfers allowed. Who do you pick? I hope this doesn't reflect your team, Dave, because you are flying high. 5 defenders.
It'd be easy to pick the most expensive defenders. So I won't do that.
I'll check a couple of them first. I think Rudiger and either Gabriel or White and Cancelo, I think, are 3 I would stick in there.
Yeah, and I think adding Laporte over other Liverpool defender because of his price, he effectively does the same job as a Liverpool defender for $1 million, $1.5 million cheaper, that he would form part of the 4. I wouldn't want to double up on Arsenal. Ramsdale has the different facet in that he always seems to pick up saves bonus, so you get that potential from him.
Definitely a Liverpool defender was your 5th, would it, or not? We haven't got any.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, is that going to be likely if you've got Kane and Salah up front? I think it's
if you've got Ramsey, maybe. You've got White and Gabriel.
If you've got Ramsey and Norgard, if you've got Ramsey and Norgard in midfield.
But you got Gabriel or White, so it's not like you got 5 premiums.
Budget notwithstanding, adding a second Liverpool player there. So Van Dijk, Trent, Gabriel / White. And I would say White because
only one Liverpool one we've gone for, because you said Cancelo, Laporte, Rudiger, Arsenal defender. So that's 4.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
And Trent.
Okay.
And I think that's doable.
I think it is with Ramsey. Trent over Van Dijk.
I know that when you looked at the 3-game sample size, that Van Dijk had outscored him by double before, but then Trent's equalled him at the weekend and outscored him the game before. I think that they'll be on similar points in the season. I guess one or the other. I imagine everybody, like the majority of people, have one of them anyway, and therefore I wouldn't be stretching to get the other one if you were going for those 5.
DB says, I'm looking at a chain move from Ward-Prowse to a Newcastle asset, effectively a 5-for-1 with 2 captaincies, then on to Rudiger. What do you think to a punt on Wood? We know he's going to start, but other than that, you don't really know a lot, do you?
Don't be disappointed if he picks up 10 points, but that's not to say that it's necessarily a bad move.
Yeah. Tom, how do you feel about holding Chelsea players? Also, best goalkeeper for the foreseeable. I've got Arsenal cover. I really like having Rudiger. That's why I held off on Silva on Thursday, is because Rudiger for me is he's just a safety blanket, isn't he? He's like Salah. He's so dependable, so reliable. So I'm glad I've got him. How are you feeling with no Chelsea players at the moment, Paul?
Well, I'll be all right until international break because they don't have any games.
That's fair enough. I even like having Rudiger when they haven't got any games. He's just like a safety blanket.
I mean, I'll miss the Chelsea game against and after the first game after the international break, and then part of my plan is to get a Chelsea defender in for Kilman the following week. So if I owned one, I would be pretty happy. Like I'd be like in your position, you're not in any rush to get rid of them or anything, right?
Well, I think we touched on this, didn't we, last week on text as well, just around most moves I'm thinking of now in all formats are, well, maybe not FPL, but almost like season-long moves. Obviously, a Newcastle player isn't a season-long move, but if you've got the average left or just above the average, we really have to be thinking of what our end team is going to look like, and it's going to be full up. Well, not full up, but Chelsea, Arsenal, maybe a couple of Leicester players. So we haven't got that many transfers left now to be really creative with, as we. So having Rudiger for me is like the same as having Salah. He will just not leave my team. Tielemans, Shane White asks what to do with him now. He seems to be off the boil and dropped. Yeah, it's a strange one. There's been like transfer rumours and contract bits and pieces. Probably
does not look like a good Sky. It does not look like a good Sky asset. Or what we've been known for, what he's been known to be a good Sky asset before. He's not shown that form at all.
I'd leave him this week. Home to Brentford on the Sunday. If he does play, he could have a really good game in that game, and then I'd probably reassess after that. Personally, what do you think, Paul? Would you take him out early or give him that game?
Well, if you had the same amount of transfers as what you've got just now, and you're contemplating potentially doing the Newcastle move, would you not contemplate and do that if you had Tielemans as well, moving on to the Newcastle mid as part of a longer term move?
Yeah, maybe.
Knowing that there's no guarantee that he starts on Sunday.
That's fair. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, either of those. Not both though.
I think I'd get rid of them for someone.
Okay. FF Louis at Overhaul. I think we all have the same team. Would be interesting to see how teams compare. Well, there's been a lot of movement, and at Overhaul, we do tend to have the same 9 or 10 players, but then they do deviate down their different paths. As different players attract different sorts of people, as structures change, as strategies change, number of transfers tend to come to the fore and things as well. Interesting there, but there's definitely been a divergence, and there will be even more, week on week now until the end of the season, won't there, I think?
Yeah, I think we've got 9 players. Have you got Rafinha?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got 9 players the same.
Have we?
So you've got Rudiger and Coutinho, and I've got Gabriel and Cancelo.
Wow, okay, interesting. Reem, who was top, I think he's dropped down to second now. Top 5 midfielders from now until the end. I think it's hard to say until the end, I think. But Coutinho I really like. Saka, volume of fixtures. Saka's got a lot of fixtures I really like.
The thing is, Rafinha could rattle in a double-digit haul.
Yeah, I like Rafinha,
and he suddenly becomes essential again. Not essential, you know what I mean. He becomes in favour again. So Rafinha to that, Ramsey to that, and a Leicester midfielder probably will come to prominence at some point. I know that I've discouraged people making a Leicester move this weekend, but their sheer volume of games and single-day captaincies will come up that you're gonna want, I think, a Leicester player at some point.
It's tough with Leicester as well, because I think a few of us might end up with Barnes and Maddison, obviously for volume of fixtures, but also you're never surprised if one of them is rested. I think it's it's very rare that they, if you see Barnes on the bench, you're not surprised. And when you see Maddison's on the bench, you're not surprised. So I think having both of them for, because obviously when they both play in all these additional games, there's big games we made there, but you're also practically guaranteed a captain for every game as well, aren't you? That'd be interesting there. Bushy asks about skipping Everton and Newcastle. I need you to transfer 10 remaining. Completely depends on where you are, in your leagues and things. I think there's probably a decent opportunity, and that's why we say to wait for the game a lot of the time, because the opportunity have opened up with Ward-Prowse, maybe Tielemans, for example, whereas that wasn't maybe as apparent last week. Would you consider skipping, Paul, or is there too big an opportunity there?
I think it's definitely viable, especially if you already own a Wolves like Sarr, Kilman to cover you off in that captaincy, like on that Friday night captaincy. If you've got someone in your team that you want rid of, maybe look at the move. And if you don't, then I wouldn't get rid of somebody that I would regret getting rid of.
Dan, what are you doing if Cancelo isn't starting this evening? So both of us have got Laporte, so we'll be quite pleased. But for those who haven't got a captain, Paul, what do you think there, or do you think it's just a leave?
Again, if there's a player that you want rid of, then bringing in Laporte for that player, like Ward-Prowse. I don't know if that is a great move or not. It really depends on what your team looks like, I think. But I wouldn't steer anyone away from doing Ward-Prowse to Laporte and captain on Laporte, I think.
Okay. FF Louis just asks about how I've made such good gains since the overhaul. I think we touched on it right at the start. So I think I was about 250th at overhaul, 88th now. Haven't done anything outlandish at all. I've landed a couple of lucky captaincies, maybe with Coutinho, and maybe sat on my hands, which I wouldn't have done previously. So historically last Thursday, and I'm not saying this is a bad move, but obviously this worked out really well for me. I think what I would have done historically is definitely moved in Thiago Silva on Thursday and probably captained him. I'm not saying bringing him in captain is a bad move, but I kind of got a bit lucky by just thinking, I definitely want Rudiger's the one I really want. So I waited, checked the captaincy on Coutinho. If he wasn't playing Leeds, I probably wouldn't have. It's just the fact that we're playing Leeds. So it's a bit of a mixture of just, luck and... But I also think it's that making sure you're covered, and then you can afford to have a bit of a risk. And this is what I'm thinking with that Arsenal-Villa game on the weekend. I think I'll be relatively covered on the Arsenal side, so I may have a bit of a punt on Coutinho as captain again, if that makes sense. So just looking for those opportunities.
Could argue he's the best captaincy option, I think.
Be looking forward to watching that one then, Paul.
I'll bring him in.
And you will. And Brian, who do you think is the best Newcastle asset? It's a really tough one, right? So I think I'm going for St. Maximum. I think he's probably the best option anyway, personally. But also it fits with me structurally as well, in terms of it allows me to move someone else to Cancelo on later on. So Emil Kraft. No, still no. I think they'd be good, to be fair. Martin Boyle says Fergie gets extra transfers. And Sean Thorpe, at what stage you go down all guns blazing, Fergie? This is it, Sean. This is the... I would normally have done it by now, but sitting opposite this gent, Paul, I think between us we strike quite a good balance. As in, Paul's incredibly reserved, which has taught me well, and maybe I've got that eye for an aggressive move, which maybe I think between us we've got a good balance. But I'm going to try and hold off. I still think it's a bit early. If I can organically climb into the top 40 or 50, because I'm not in the same cast leagues as Paul. So Paul's playing the cast league, so it's fine. He's not going to go all out organs blazing. I'm not really in many, so I may just, if I do get to a point where I think
bragging rights,
the bragging, if I'm like 60 or 70 points off the top with a few transfers left, I may just think, get and go for it. Just go for a Leicester block defense or something crazy like that. You never know. Let's have a quick look at my team. This is my team at the moment, who say nothing special at all. Ramsdale in goal, Trent, Laporte captain this evening. I hope he plays. Kilman and Rudiger. Question for you, Paul. If Laporte doesn't play tonight and Cancelo does, would you, in my position, do Laporte straight back to Cancelo?
I wouldn't advise against it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because Laporte, if you're playing ownership, I know that you don't singly play ownership. I imagine that a lot of people would do that move, and Laporte's ownership drops right down then, and Cancelo's goes right back up.
Yeah.
I don't think that you'll probably need to worry about it too much with Diaz being injured, unless there's something that's wrong with Laporte. Yeah. And if there was, do you really want to be bringing in a City defender if both Laporte and Diaz are out?
Good shout. Yeah, I'll see. I think I'm pretty sure Laporte plays, right? And even if he scores 4 or 6 points left than Cancelo, because Cancelo likely.
I think they both play. I personally think they both play. So.
I think they will as well. I've got a midfield of Coutinho, Ward-Prowse, Saka, and Rafinha, and then Salah and Kane up front. So after this chat, I think I'm going to do Ward-Prowse to St. Maximum on Thursday. I may I don't know if I can afford it. I probably won't, but Laporte to a Spurs player, maybe not the end of the world. I don't mean a defender per se. Maybe Kulusevski potentially, and then move someone else back to Cancelo after the break potentially is something I could do.
Yeah, one thing you'd have to watch is that if you were trying to be smart after the Friday night game, if you hadn't planned on making any transfers before the Friday night game and you wanted rid of Kilman, you wouldn't be able to do it based on the budget that's available. Yeah. You'd have to make multiple moves to get Ramsey in because you'd be on 3-5-2.
A good shout. Yeah. So this is something I'll work out. But you're absolutely right. That's massively important. Again, something I would have definitely been caught up with in the past.
But maybe you'd be making 2 moves anyway because you'd be taking the Newcastle player back out. So
I'll see.
At that time.
Hub £500 league 10th place Daniel Kerwin, really big rise from 22nd, well played. Nima Kafai Kolamadi, Fantasy Football Hub's very own Nima is up in 9th. 8th Daniel Thomas, 7th Jack Smiley, 6th James Ingram, 5th Christopher Sharkey, 4th Ashley Tongue, 3rd Ryan West, 2nd Maurice Weeks, and 1st Liam Stevens, Frog Skills FC, who is now top of the shop. He is top of Sky Fantasy Football, I think for the first time this season. Overtook Reem, who's in the chat, I think, Reem, on the weekend. Very, very well played, gents. Very, 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 very well done, Liam. It's very, very tense at the top. Some very close scores. I'm kind of glad I'm not up there, really, because I know how tense it can be. It overtakes everything, and you're more concerned. Every transfer you make has that, has that weight hanging around your neck of, this could be the move or not, which wins me it or loses it. It's not a nice place to be in. Bit of advice on that. Just make sure at the end of it, you don't kick yourself. I think that's the biggest bit of advice, which I took on Dream Team last year. Don't make a move where if it doesn't work out, you will think, why did I do that? Why did I do that? They're the ones that hurt the most. Definitely. 4 Nations League. Dragons curly tail starting to creep back into the picture there, Paul. 6th place, Liam Dorian. 5th place, Ian Parrin on 2573. My second team dropped down to 4th, 2587. Dan's team up into 3rd, 2590. He did overtake me, but I've overtaking him this week. My team is in 2619, second place. And the lead, Paul, has been cut in recent weeks from 70 points to just 19 points now. And I noticed yesterday it was 10, but I think you had Gabrielle. So getting closer now. So the Dragon's tail is back in there. Dave Perrins, who is in, I think he's 5th or 6th at the moment, says, I'm only spending about 95% of my time thinking about it, to be fair. Not too bad. It's pretty good going. And John L says, Andrew, 88th, not bad for a guy who, according to Paul, doesn't understand the rules of fantasy football. That is it for this week. Hope you enjoyed the very unexpected long episodes. It's going to be one of our longest episodes of the season as we head into the international break. A massive, massive thank you for everyone who joined us this lunchtime on the stream. We hope you've enjoyed. We hope you've enjoyed with your sandwich and your cup of tea this lunchtime. Thanks to everyone who will watch it back. Thanks to everyone who will listen on the podcast versions too. Thank you, Paul, Mr. McAnulty. We have a well-deserved break next week. Where can people find you, Paul?
On Twitter at Paul McAnulty 1 MCANULTY. If anyone's got any questions, happy to answer direct messages or whatever.
Lovely stuff. My Twitter handle is at FFH_Fergi. So this podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub, Sky and TFF YouTube channel, and also available in all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And if you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast. Give us 5 stars and leave some comments. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ. And our podcast Twitter handle is at FFH_Sky. So please follow and feel free to ask any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you will find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and much, much more. Don't forget to also check out ffstuff.co.uk. Thank you so much to everyone in the chat for all your kind words. We will be back in a couple of weeks looking ahead to what will be Sky Game Week 34 and the final run-in. Enjoy the international break. Stay safe and goodbye for now.